Right, okay, well, now we're coming to the moment I have been looking forward to all week, joined by my all-time football hero, Le God, Matthew Le Tissier. I'm wearing my Hawaiian Saints shirt in honour of having you on the show, Matt. How the very devil are you? Brilliant to have you with us.
I'm really good, thank you, mate. Yeah, enjoying the wonderful weather that we're having at the moment. Played golf the last 3 days, walked the course, and absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, good stuff. Not too hot for golf then, right? We've got to close down schools and railways, but the golf courses remain open despite the hot weather, yeah?
They do remain open, yeah. It's yeah. Don't get me started on all that nonsense.
Yeah. Well, there's quite a lot of World Cup nonsense for me to ask you about, Matt. Look, what do you make of England so far? So, obviously, blistering win against Croatia, great game to watch, and then that absolute heap of hooey against Ghana, a game so bad it scarred my retinas. What do you make of England so far?
Yeah, I think the important bit was the first game. Obviously, that was always going to be the crucial game in the group. To come out of that with 3 points, I think just kind of took the pressure off the other two games. Ghana, probably the fact that they'd won their first game didn't help us because they knew only a point was going to get them through. Obviously Carlos Queiroz is a very experienced manager, had them well drilled. Very difficult to break down. And when you go into the knockout stages of the tournament, you'll probably see less games like that. So I wouldn't worry too much about us stinking the place out against Ghana.
Okay, so that's reassuring. But look, you were always a player for Saints and should have had many more caps for England. I reckon you're the best player never to have played in a World Cup, with honourable mentions to Ryan Giggs, George Weah, and George Best. But
Yeah.
what I was looking for against Ghana was some like flair and imagination, some Le Tissier style, just do something unusual out of the blue. And it kind of seemed to me that the England team, and perhaps this is true of all modern football teams, Matt, I'd like your take, are just kind of drilled and like pawns controlled by the manager, rather than actually kind of expressing themselves. I mean, we threw on Saka, we threw on O'Reilly, and we just seem to be locked into the same grid position. Can people play the Le Tissier way in the modern game, or are you following instructions a bit like you do in American football, that you just sort of get the orders shouted into your ear and you just got to do that? Look, I know some managers complained about you not tackling back, Matt, but that was basically the only thing that was shouted at you from the sidelines, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we've entered an era of football where the managers' egos have become way out of control, and it's all about them, and it's not about the players anymore. That's why I think you see a serious lack of flair. The players have to stick to this way of playing that the manager wants, and all individuality and flair is kind of taken out of it. You know, you're almost playing football by numbers. You know, you could pick up the ball in a certain position. These are your two options. You either do that or you do that. And if you don't do that and do that, then you're going to find yourself out of the team because you're not following orders. And I do feel like we've entered this strange kind of era where the manager is more important than the players.
Yeah, it's disappointing to watch because, you know, we want to see wonder goals. We want to see creativity. That's what fans want to see. You obviously want to see your team win, but, you know, I don't like it being too militaristic and just drilled, right? I want to see individual parts of flair. Look, you've reassured me a bit, Matt, about England. I'm still in a state of mild depression after that 0-0 draw. But who else has kind of caught your eye if you had to back one of the teams to win it? Do you fancy England, or is there a standout team that you think will come a cropper against?
No, I think we've got a reasonable chance of winning it. You know, but there are some very good teams in the tournament. You know, France have got an incredible front line. They're going to be the team to beat for me. But I also think there's been some other outstanding performances. I mean, Japan look like a very good team. You know, somebody who's kind of not been spoken about too much, but they look, you know, pretty decent and look like you wouldn't want to meet them in a knockout game. So yeah, I think, you know, it's the tournament. I think for me will only really come alive when the knockout matches start. I think it's just a little bit of just making sure you get through the group stages. You know, don't do anything silly, don't pick up injuries, and then the tournament starts when the group games are out of the way.
Yeah. So another part of your career history, Matt, that I think Tuchel and others need some advice on. Tuchel said that he thinks England will have to win 2 penalty shootouts in order to actually lift the trophy. And with an extra knockout round this time, right, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's pretty likely that the winners will surely have to win at least 1, if not 2 penalty shootouts. I'm going to get your record wrong now. Is it 47 from 48 penalties you scored? Yep. I hope you'll forgive me. We had Mark Crossley on last week, so he was the only one ever to save a Le Tissier penalty. Talk me through that, because look, it's probably going to happen sooner or later. I don't have in my mind's eye the 5 England players to take them, but what is the secret of taking a penalty kick? Is it in your head? Obviously, you need technical skill as well, but is it largely psychological? Do players fold? I try to look at the facial expression of a player as they're walking up to the penalty spot, but you're the pro, you're the expert. What's the secret of scoring 98% of your penalties?
I think probably the most important bit is you've got to want to be there first and foremost. You've got to be comfortable in that situation. To have the whole stadium kind of staring down at you and realising the amount of pressure that's on the situation ahead of you. So you've got to be comfortable. You've got to want to be there to take them, and then on top of that, you've got to have some good technique. I was quite fortunate. I was able to side foot the ball pretty powerfully, so all of my penalties kind of went to one side or the other with a bit of pace on them. And I never in 48 penalties hit one down the middle. So I didn't make things too complicated, gave myself 2 choices, and I kind of made my decision just before I was about to strike the ball. Because if I make my decision too early, it makes it a bit easier for the goalkeeper.
Yeah. Now I was watching reels and reels of your goals and penalties just the other day, and there's one I've got to ask you about. I think it's 1995 at the Dell against Blackburn Rovers. I guess it was Flowers in goal. Great penalty. I think Saints beat Blackburn 3-1 that day. But just before you take the penalty, Alan Shearer, former Saints teammate, comes up to you and says something in your ear with a rather evil smile. And I've never, ever got to the bottom of what he said and what you said back, either immediately or when you scored. Please give us that piece of breaking news. If you can recall it, I know it's some way back. Do you know the one I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, we were given the penalty. Alan come and stood with his in between me and Tim Flowers with his back to Tim. And he he looked at me and he just said, whatever you do, don't smash it down the middle. Right, now, apparently what had happened was the night before the game, him and Tim had been talking about what I would do if I got a penalty against him, because obviously I'd taken a lot of penalties against him in training, and he knew where my favourite corner was. And between the two of them, apparently they'd come up with the answer that because I'd never gone down the middle before, that I would smash it down the middle against him because he wouldn't be expecting it.
Right.
So in the context, Alan had come up to me and said, whatever you do, don't smash it down the middle. Now, that sounds like he's doing me a favour, but I don't know if he was just trying to double bluff me and get in my head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I wasn't going to take any notice of anything he said. I just stuck to my game plan, stuck it in the corner, and then decided to give Tim some stick when I put it in.
Great. And of course, look, you won't recall this because so many Southampton fans have met you, but I met you, it would have been a bit over 20 years ago. My ex-wife worked for a company that made holiday magazines called The Pride of Britain, and they'd get celebrities like you and put you up overnight, and you'd get a nice stay in the hotel, and you could have whatever you wanted at the restaurant, but the payback was that you had to be interviewed the next day, and they'd write it all up in the Pride of Britain magazine. And I got to apologise to you now, Matt, more than 20 years on, because I hijacked the interview, and I had about 150 Panini stickers for you to sign and bubblegum cards and all of the rest. And my ex-wife was asking you questions and I was interjecting. So she was saying, like, who's the favourite manager you've worked under? And before you could get a word out, I was saying, it's Alan Ball, isn't it, Matt? It's Alan Ball, isn't it, Matt? And what's the best goal you've ever scored? And I said it was that absolutely beautiful goal against Tim Flowers when we lost 3-2 at Ewood Park. And you were just sort of nodding along. So my apologies for that more than 2 decades later.
No problem.
But is that still your favourite goal? That brilliant one where you just sort of you go round really 3 or 4 Blackburn players, and then it's from miles out that you put it over Flowers, and he just stays on his back. He doesn't look like he's willing to even stand up and look you in the eye. Is that still your all-time favourite goal? Am I right about that?
It's my best goal. It's not my favourite goal, which is slightly different. But yeah, from a technical point of view, that's the best goal I ever scored. It was a bit disappointing because it actually ended a 3-2 defeat that day. So that puts a little bit of a dampener on it. But my favourite goal actually was my last ever goal for Saints, which just happened to be the last ever goal at our old stadium as well, at the Old Dell.
Yeah, I was there for a 3-2 win against Arsenal, wasn't it? And that was just brilliant that you got that goal. I've seen that back and back again. Of course, Chris Marsden very nearly took the glory away from you, right? He nearly, right in the dying breath, made it 4-2. I bet you would never have forgiven Chris Marsden if he'd taken that honour of the last goal at the Dell. But I remember that
Yeah,
really clearly. Now, the other thing I want to ask you about, Matt, because I think I'm right that this applied to your career as well. But here on UK Live Online and on this show, we're a bit worried that modern World Cup football has become open borders football, right? 27 or perhaps 28 teams, depends how you count Morocco, have got foreign managers. It seems that you can basically qualify for kind of virtually any nation of your choice if you've been on holiday there once or have a great aunt living there. Morocco fielded a whole team of 11 players, none of whom were born in Morocco. 25 out of the 26 Curacao players were not born in Curacao. Now, you were a Channel Islander, right? So coming from Guernsey, you had the whole choice. I think you could play for France, you could play for any of the home nations, but you very loyally, explain what the rules were then and tell me what you think they should be. Shouldn't you just have to play for the place you were born in?
So I couldn't play for France.
Right.
But yes, back in those days, I could have played for any of the home nations. So I did have that choice. But I grew up as a kid just wanting to play for England. I always considered myself English growing up. So that was never an issue for me. Wales tried to get me to go and play for them at one point, but that just wasn't. That wasn't on my radar at all. I just, as a kid, wanted to play for. That was my ambitions in life, was to be a professional footballer and play for England. So I managed to do both of those. So I wouldn't. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. I really don't get how the criteria for being a manager of a country is different to what it should be to become a player of that country, because you're all part of the same team, so you should all be under the same criteria. So yeah, I'm absolutely with you. I think managers of national teams should be, people that are qualified to play for that team if they were a player. I don't see what the difference is. So even don't get me wrong. If England win the World Cup, I'll be very happy. But I actually think the rules are wrong, and Thomas Tuchel actually shouldn't be allowed to be manager of England.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It just seems to me, look, club football is, now completely, internationalized. I mean, obviously fans still like he's one of our own, if somebody's broken through the academy, has a loyalty with the team. But if club football is going to be like that, I want international football to actually be about which goddamn nation you're from, right? I mean, it just seems to me
absolutely.
a bit of an absurdity. Now, the other thing we've been chewing through, Matt, and obviously it's been a big talking point, you've got Ronaldo and Messi in the twilights of their careers, but still impressing enormously. Okay, Ronaldo had a sticky start, but then in the second match, good. Messi, who I still think should have been sent off against Algeria, so shouldn't have played, but nevertheless has got all 5 of Argentina's goals. Careers that glittering and that long, you obviously can't sum them up in just 180 minutes of football. But who's your greatest of all time? I'm still a Pele man myself, even though I like Messi and Ronaldo. But who would your pick be of the greatest player of all time? And are they actually at this World Cup, or are they long since departed for the great football pitch in the sky?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really get to see Pele very much. So I don't really. I can only go by what my dad tells me about just how good he was. And of course, back in those days, you didn't get to see the amount of footage that you get these days as well. So I think the players these days have a bit of an advantage over players of yesteryear, because there's so much coverage of the football now that everybody gets to see nearly everything if they choose to. I thought Diego Maradona was incredible. As much as he was, cheating with the hand of God and all that stuff, and probably not having the most professional of lifestyles off the pitch. On the pitch, he was an absolute genius. And he played in an era where the pitches weren't perfect. The refereeing was a lot more liberal. The defenders were allowed to have a lot more kicks at you that they can have in this day and age before they get a card. So I think it was a lot harder to play back then. So I think for me, it's between Maradona and Messi.
Right.
I do think Messi's goal record is just incredible. And to be still doing it at his age on the biggest stage in the world is incredible. Ronaldo is not too far behind him, in my opinion. I think we've been blessed to see two outstanding talents in the same era. So yeah, I mean that would be it for me. But that debate will rage on forever and ever, and there's no correct answer to it. It's just people's opinion.
Yeah. And what about anybody coming through at the moment? I mean, having Messi and Ronaldo together, it was a bit like sort of men's tennis a few years ago, where you had Djokovic and Federer and Nadal. So it could be, if you like, as a cluster, we've had the best, even if you were to, plump for Maradona. But have you got your eye on any of the players coming through? Mbappe's obviously talked about a lot. This, Vinny Jr. at Brazil. Or given this is almost, well, it will be the last World Cup for Ronaldo and Messi. Good God, they'll be in their mid-40s by the time of the next one. Who have you got your eye on who's in their 20s and might be in 20 years' time we're saying they're in their 6th World Cup and have smashed the all-time scorers record? Or are they just not up to the Messi-Ronaldo sort of quality?
Mbappe will break Messi's record. I don't really have any question about that. He's not too far behind him as it stands, and he's got probably 2 or 3 more World Cups in him. So I think that record will go. Messi will hold it for a short while, but then Mbappe will take that, and he'll be talked about as one of the greats. Haaland. If Haaland played for a nation that was one of the ones that were going to be challenging every World Cup at the latter stages, then he'd probably go close to breaking all sorts of records, because his goal scoring is just incredible. Even when he's not really involved in the game much, he still manages to be in the right place at the right time and score loads of goals. And let's be honest, at the end of the day, that's what football's all about.
It is. Look, I can't let you go without reflecting on our dear Saints. I mean, what a heartbreaking end to the season. If you had told me that Southampton would finish the season 21 games unbeaten and scoring a winner in the last few minutes of extra time, I would have ripped your arm off for it. But it didn't pan out that way. What's your feeling about what's happening at Southampton? I mean, we start with a 4-point penalty next year. God knows how many of the squad will now be able to keep. Was the punishment too harsh? And is it going to be really difficult to rebuild after that knock?
Yeah. Punishment was incredibly harsh, I thought, for what was really a minor infringement. This rule about not looking at other people's training sessions, it doesn't apply anywhere else apart from the EFL. It's not in Europe. I don't think it's in the Premier League even. And if it had been done 24 hours earlier, it wouldn't have actually been a crime. So to suffer the penalty that we suffered, I thought was incredibly excessive, given what other penalties have been dished out for stuff in the past. It's from, but at the end of the day, we have to take it on the chin, because we did break the rule. So I'm not suggesting that there should be no punishment. I just feel that the punishment was overly exuberant, and to start next season with 4 points as well, a 4-point deduction, as well as getting kicked out the playoff final, is just crazy. And on top of that, the FA are investigating Tonda as well, so they might even suspend him. So I think Southampton have been made an example of, quite frankly, and had it been one of the bigger clubs, I don't think the EFL would have had the balls to do it, quite frankly. But what football authorities are like. They will pick on the smaller clubs to make an example of, and when the bigger clubs do something, they tend to get away with it because they got the finances to take it legal. And we've seen in the past, Chelsea broke the rules with their academy, so I think got a £10 million fine, no point deduction, not kicked out of any competition. So it depends on what you think the level of gamesmanship or cheating, whatever you want to call it. It depends how you view the severity of it. Personally, for me, what happened to us, nothing that happened had any bearing on the actual game itself. Middlesbrough battered us in the first leg, should have been 3 or 4-0 up at half time. So obviously, a couple of minutes footage on an iPhone was not going to have any bearing on the outcome of the game. However, if a player was to dive in the penalty area and get a penalty from it, and your team score and win the game, that actually has a material effect on the game, and the player and the club don't get punished at all for it.
Yeah. No,
Yet you could argue that that's a more serious offence because it's actually affecting the outcome of the game.
yeah.
Whereas what we did had no impact on the outcome of the game. So just it depends on your view, really.
Yeah, feels a bit like me that we got life imprisonment for shoplifting, basically, a pretty harsh offence. Matt, last question for you. Throughout the tournament, we've got me, Mark Littlewood, against the rest of the world on a predictions competition. Because it's me against the rest of the world, I'm always allowed to go first, but I need your prediction for Ecuador versus Germany tonight. I've gone 2-0 for Germany, but you can have any other score other than 2-0 to Germany. What's your best guess?
I'd go one more. I'd go 3-0.
3-0 to the Germans. Matt, it's been absolutely great to have you on. Thanks so much. Brilliant insight.
You're welcome,
great
mate.
banter. Hope to get you back on later in the tournament, hopefully, if England go deep. So that was Matt Le Tissier, everybody. Le God.
Cheers, Matt.
Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you,
Thanks so much. All the best, Matt. Brilliant. My all-time football hero there. I'm a bit flustered. I think we'll have to go to Edward Hughes with the news.